I often get asked the question, does construction actually have waste? And you'd be surprised to find out that most people don't have an experience to look at this. And if you're not taught to understand and recognize what waste is, you won't see it. On the flip side, you might not even see the value you do. You might just assume that because you go to work, you show up at your job, you do the thing, the building gets built, the road gets put in, the bridge gets connected, you've done the mechanical equipment, you've built the industrial building, you've done it. But in reality, there are degrees of which you can have done it. Let's take a look at construction waste by first understanding what happens with every dollar spent. Research by several institutions over decades shows consistent information over and over again. And I see the same thing when I look at the portfolios of medium, large, and small construction companies. Design is the same, and we see the same type of numbers even in other industries like software. But let's just focus on construction. For every dollar spent, somewhere between 60 to 80 plus percent is wasted. The categories of waste are pure waste, where if you didn't do that thing, nobody would get upset, nobody would pay you extra, nobody would say anything to you. The next category is non value added. In this category, it's something that if the client had the choice or the person receiving your work had the choice, they would rather you didn't do it. The final smallest sliver of green is the value added category. This is what the customers actually want. In the value added category, this is where information, materials, or a combination of both are transformed into something that customers, stakeholders, or the next people in the value stream want. What does my experience show? There are 8 major types of waste and 2 other categories of overburden as well as variation. Those 2 tend to cause these 8. I like to remember the acronym downtime to keep them in my mind, which stands for defects, work that's installed that's not correct to specification or customer requirements, overproduction, when people are made to work and produce too much, more than what is necessary for the next step, waiting. Waiting is one of the number one things that causes money to be set on fire and wasted in construction. Waiting for the next process step, waiting for slow machinery, waiting at different choke points or bottlenecks in construction flows, waiting for design to get to the level so that the handoff could happen to the next subsequent designer. Non-utilized talent is another big one. This is the waste associated with not using people's fullest capabilities and potential in the work that they do. Travel and transport has to do with the movement of things. Inventory has to do with the wasted time and effort associated with having to keep track of lots of materials or information when they're not necessary. Think of filing cabinets full of files for what if thing or toolboxes full of tools that may not even be used during the course of the entire phase of construction. Motion is the waste associated with people that are moving without creating value, like looking for tools, walking too far to bathrooms because there are too few, and more. Excess processing is producing a level of quality beyond what is needed. Now, if you will look at some hard data, construction productivity versus agriculture, according to the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics, since they've been recording it in the 1960s, you can see construction productivity on the bottom as basically flat, and with the trend since the 2000s going even more negative. So what that graph is telling you that as compared to agriculture, which has seen exponential gains, and we live in the same place where technology that's used in farming is also available to construction teams. It's not technology making the difference, it's processes that make the difference. And these are one of the greatest things that I've learned this year. I learned that human beings typically are process blind. We tend to see things and people and assert blame at the 2 W's, who messed up and where they messed up, instead of looking at a systemic approach and understanding root causes or relationships in a complex system or a sequence of activities. Newsflash, all construction is pretty complex. And it's the processes that cause us to make the most amount of waste. And what we've learned when we look back at what's happening in the 1950s, we had the Toyota production system, which showed how we can use good ideas like flow lines, putting flow at a priority, looking at creating value. Later, fast forwarding to lean construction and Scrum in the 1990s, bringing the customer into the process, making customer part of the value delivery instead of guessing what they want or telling the customer what they want. In 2001, the signing of the Agile Manifesto, they put even more emphasis on processes after looking at the human side of interaction, as well as a focus on adaptation. And then in 2005, we have contracting and construction catching up with the first integrated form of agreement, and we start to see the proliferation of integrated project delivery, integrated lean project delivery, or collaborative contracts. With all of that, we have choices. You have three things that you can do that come top of mind. You could do nothing and continue to lose money, be frustrated, have your time wasted, stress your family. You can learn the tools, techniques, and strategies so that you can keep more of every dollar, waste less of your time, be more productive, create more value, or you can change careers. You can go work in agriculture where they're experiencing a boom to productivity. I actually like construction and building. So I choose the second option, learning the tools, techniques, and strategies. And you look at your calendar over the next 5 days. On Monday, your company, your project team, your design group, your department is responsible for time and money for that week and other resources, equipment, other materials. And every day you work, if you're blind to the process of what waste is doing to your team, your project, your site, your company, you're going to continue to keep less and less and less money. By the time Friday comes, you're only going to be holding on to a nickel, 5 cents of value. If we look at the 5 days proportionally to what we see waste costing us in design and construction, you started with $1 on Monday. And by Friday, because of the processes and systems in place, you've lost over 80 cents. And that happens every single week. And so you've got to ask yourself, what are you going to change on your calendar? To make the example of the 1 week even more real, every year I teach a class at Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville. It's a leadership class, and the topic is the Lean Construction Institute's Introduction to Lean Project Delivery. We talk about the different challenges that they have in their projects. We talk about waste specifically, and we do an exercise where students learn what are the 8 types of waste. We even look at the 3 different categories of activities, with value added being the smallest, non-value added but necessary, and then pure waste, the downtime factors. And every year that I ask this of the teams, and this is typically about 40 to 60 people, it kind of changes based on the year, the number that we total for waste goes up. So this is the exercise. We ask each individual of the 40 people, let's take a more typical smaller class. Everyone has 3 minutes to think about what they just learned with the waste and write down waste that they observed on their project over the last 5 days. And then they share that story at their table. They're sitting in tables of 6 to 8 students, 6 to 8 construction professionals, and they vote for the highest waste that they think is at that table. Then we, as a group, price each one of those winning waste categories. The last time that we did this, it totaled over $26 million lost in 5 days. $26 million, a random sampling of just 40 people, 40 construction professionals, 40 project managers at many different project sites. That was just a sample. Imagine your company and how much money you're setting on fire every single week. How many millions are you losing